strong. Actually a poster child for absorptive capacity, right? All of that activity, all of that working environment, all that culture we saw in the video, a lot of that was designed at maintaining absorptive capacity. Traditionally, we think of, go back to 3M, traditionally we think of absorptive capacity, so we used to use, whether you have an R&D facility, research and development facility, as an illustration of absorptive capacity, or as a proxy for absorptive capacity. It's actually a lot more than whether you have an R&D department. It's how good is your organization at coping with and exploiting new ideas when the new ideas come along. It's not generating the ideas, more about doing something with those ideas when you have them. Google, very, very well known for having a high absorptive capacity. Actually, Apple does as well. Both of these companies are known for having high absorptive capacity. Okay, network externalities. Network externalities I started talking about in our when we were bringing the discussion together here. Network externalities basically happen when the value to one user increases the more other users there are. I was just speaking with somebody about energy drinks. Maybe it's that time of term. But the thing about buying a can of Coke or buying a Red Bull or something like this, the value of a Red Bull doesn't depend on how many other people are also drinking Red Bull at the same time. There's no network externality. However, the value of choosing an Android phone does depend on how many other Android phone users there are. If there are no other Android phone users, not only will you have the social effect of nobody recognizing that you're using that same phone, but you'll also have the technology effect of there being no apps or no support. And so there's something about network effects are these, they're called externalities. They're external to the market, they're valuable to individual adopters. Networking externality is when the value to one user increases when there are more other users. I was just speaking with the BBM fan, the BlackBerry fan up there. Very, very powerful network effects around BBM. If those network effects were not there, BlackBerry would be in even worse trouble than they already are. Yeah, actually you should know I've got a little history with BlackBerry in the sense, well, not only is it a Canadian company and I've been teaching in Canada for 8 years, so it's been the poster child of a successful tech company for Canada for the last period of time. But the town where BlackBerry was founded and has kind of really developed is actually the hometown of my partner. So I know a lot of BlackBerry employees and I feel kind of emotionally connected to BlackBerry. It's a very sad thing. It's a very sad thing.
But the thing is that now they've invented this WhatsApp Messenger,
yes,
who not only connects BlackBerry to BlackBerry, but BlackBerry, iPhone, and Android. So
I know, and that's the exact. See, Toshin's turning around saying, "See, I told you." Yeah, we had that exact conversation in that group, saying, "You know, what's wrong with you with your VPN?" We have other apps that do that now.
yeah.
But there was a period of time there where people were not switching to iPhones from BlackBerries because of the network effects existing in BlackBerries that were not yet available in the iPhone. And now, of course, we have other ways of getting around. And it's a very important thing. So when Apple was first launching the iPhone, they had to think, how are we going to get BlackBerry users to switch? At that time, handheld devices like that were thought of as a business machine, like an email machine, really. How are we going to get people to switch? And I remember the very first sort of adopters, I don't know how any of you, how early you were adopters of the iPhones. I know many of you have iPhones now. But first of all, they were concerned about, oh, but, you know, it's not as easy. The screen, the typing into the screen is not as easy as it is with BlackBerry. You can go out and think of people pressing Present network externality. Okay, installed base. This is the number of units already in that are already installed. Sometimes we use market share as a proxy for installed base. So when I was getting at the data there in terms of the tablet operating systems and saying that we've gone from the end of 2010 to the end of 2011, we've gone from 10 million tablets shipped to 26 million tablets shipped. That's the installed base of tablets. Okay? And then we look at the different technologies, the different operating systems, and we see the installed base is now getting close to 50-50 for Android compared to iOS. Why? Because there are other tablets now by Samsung, by who else makes tablets that uses Android? BlackBerry uses their own, bless them, they make mistakes there, yeah.
Asus.
Sorry?
Asus.
Yes.
Asus.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So there are several other tablets available now. Similar to the phone story, at a price point that's lower than an iPad. No, not necessarily. did you know there's a new iPad coming out next week?
Yeah.
It looks more like an incremental kind of, like a nicer screen and a fancier processor, but I'm like, this is not going to change my life, so so you see, I just completely got by this bloody company. Okay, it's all based. Complementary goods, this has come up before, particularly this came up in our conversation last week around how Apple reinvented itself as a digital hub. Remember that we needed the complementary goods at the time of the launch of the iPod, which was actually the beginning of the idea of having a home button and scrolling around. At that point, they needed the recorded music studios on board to make iTunes work. So the availability of complementary goods. So now we're talking in the operating system world, not just about music, but about the actual hardware itself as a complementary good. I mean, Ettore is making the argument that you can't even compare these because in some companies they control the complementary goods, some companies they don't control complementary goods. Apps has come up as an important complementary good. Did anybody in the articles have any recent data on how many apps there are in the App Store versus in the marketplace? Android? How many apps are available? Anybody know? 450,000 for which one? For Apple, 450,000. They did cross their 25 billionth download, by the way. I know we talked about that last week. So around 450,000. Any idea on the Android marketplace? 350. So getting closer. Big numbers, much bigger than in the video. It was 10,000, 100,000. Now 350, 400. Getting closer. But it's very important in terms of adoption that people feel that the complementary goods are there. And a winner-take-all market is a market where one standard ends up dominating. So the classic example of a winner-take-all market these days is Microsoft, and in fact it's even in the textbook that we're using. Microsoft's operating system for PCs, a winner-take-all market in the sense that they've made a lot of money because they won the, quote, standards war. Therefore, they were able to establish the standards in that market and are able to recoup the benefits over a long period of time. So the question is, is this really a standards war that we're in with operating systems, or will we end up in a situation where Ettore pitched this idea that maybe it's like games consoles where we have Xbox and we have Sony and whatever, we have the different players. So, key ideas, if any of those are not clear, it's important that you check them out. Let's see if we can start talking about the Android story using some of the pictures from the textbook here, using some of the frameworks. So let's think of this first of all. Think of which is the incumbent in the operating systems, in the mobile operating systems world. Which company is the incumbent? Apple. Okay, so Apple at the moment is the one that started with this, with dominating the standard in the initial. So think of this as Apple's complementary goods availability. This is the App Store, handsets, installed base, number of people who already own iPhones, and then technological functionality, the actual experience of using the gadget itself. And included in there things like brand, design, and that sort of thing. Now, if Android was going to come in, Google was going to come in and try and beat the top level here of these three components all in together, they're going to come in and not use the installed base for complementary goods availability at all. They had to come up with a technological functionality, new entrant that's incompatible with the existing installed base of complementary goods, has to come up with a technological functionality which is way, way higher than here. And iPhone as a product is still quite hard to beat. Now, you can beat it on price, of course, and that's one of the ways in which Google is attacking this. You saw them giving away free handsets, but also putting Android on handsets which are much cheaper. So that's one way in which the functionality, you think of it as functionality per pound or something, and that's one way that they're really increasing the functionality. They're also making sure that if you're switching from from an Apple phone to an Android-based operating system phone, that you're able to take some stuff with you. Did you switch because you're an Android user, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever used an iPhone?
Yes.
Yes. So what was it like switching from one to the other? What type of, was it an easy thing to do as a consumer, or?
I think in the beginning it was different to use both of them because habit.
Right.
Yeah.
So habit is an important part of this. Yeah. Go ahead.
Just like in the beginning, I use Nokia to
so your Android-based phone now,
Yeah.
do you feel like that's compatible with what's going on your Mac computer, or does it not matter, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's no matter because I find it's because I can use Facebook, I can use Gmail, I can use WhatsApp, so I think nothing different.
Exactly. Okay, so one of the things that Android did was make sure that users can use Facebook, Gmail, WhatsApp, the other applications that are important here. So what Android's managing to do is to tap into this complementary goods availability. Okay? Now, the other thing that Android's trying to do is make sure that the installed base grows enough so the technological functionality advantage they need doesn't have to be this big, it can be this big. Okay? So this is one of the ways of trying to enter into a network-based environment, making sure that there's back compatibility. Now, I think I assigned the standards wallpaper for this class, right? The standards wallpaper of Marian Shapiro. They talk about evolution and revolution. So which of these is evolution and which of these is revolution? Between panel B and panel C, which is evolution and which is revolution? Let's try evolution first. Panel B is evolution, absolutely. Making sure that there's back compatibility and incrementally increasing the technological functionality. Whereas this one is revolution, coming up with something that's completely new. Okay. So this is useful because, this is a useful way of thinking about what are the different elements, what are the different pieces, and how big are each of these building blocks, if you like, of value. And if there's a new standard coming in or a new product coming in, to what extent is it compatible with current complementary goods, the current installed base, or something that's really new. Now, this panel makes the point that says, this is the actual, the white boxes are the actual installed base, complementary goods, and technological functionality. Whereas the ones behind you are perceived by consumers and the anticipated in the future. Now, why is this important? It's important for two big reasons. First reason, if you're trying to persuade people to switch from an iPhone to an Android-based phone, you need to somehow persuade people it's not going to be painful. You need to somehow persuade people you can still use your Facebook and your email and your WhatsApp, but you get these other things as well. Or you get it for a less price. Okay? That's what you're trying to persuade people. So you have to try and persuade people it's not just the actual complementary goods availability, but the perceived complementary goods availability. The same with the Android marketplace. You have to persuade people that actually there are plenty of apps available on an Android. It's not that you would be stepping back in time just because you used to have lots of apps on your phone. This turns out to be very important, and you see that sort of the gaming that goes on in these standard wars playing with this perceived space. So, for example, the word vaporware came up in both the chapter and in the paper that I assigned for this week. This is where companies talk about products that are coming as a way of encouraging people to adopt into their standard, even if they've got no actual intention of launching that product. So you see a lot of this going on. You see a lot of product placement happening. It's interesting to me, just recently I've noticed on US dramas, for a few years there, if you were watching Grey's Anatomy or if you were watching, I don't know, legal ones, those shows, you know what I mean, the dramas, the HBO shows, whatever. For a few years, all you saw was Apple products, iPhones, and then iPads. Now you're starting to see other tablets in these, showing that, oh yes, in a legal office you can use a tablet that's not an iPad as well. So it's pushing this perceived installed base. And what's also important is the anticipated installed base. So we started off this conversation by saying, well, you know what, at the moment, Apple is doing very well in the mobile standards, in the mobile operating systems game. But we're anticipating that Google will do better in the future. We feel like they're anticipating that the momentum might be with them. Now, okay, we should switch our phones. How often do you change your phone? 2 years?